All right, everybody. We have the amazing Amy Waters here with us today. And it's so funny because we just connected on Instagram a couple weeks ago through some mutual friends and connected immediately. And I just knew she was a voice that needed to be heard on this episode today. So thank you so much, Amy, for being here. I'd love for you to just share with the listeners a little bit about yourself. And we'll just dive into all the juicy good stuff for today.
That sounds perfect. And thank you for having me. I agree. It was an instant connect. You already speak language that is so fluid for me. I think just maybe even parallel journeys along the way. So I'm Amy Waters. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in Tyler, Texas. I'm also the co-owner of Living Well Holistic Counseling and Wellness in Tyler, Texas, and we are a practice that aims to care for people, mind, body, and soul. And so when we say holistic, that's what we mean is just whole person, the way God made us. I've been counseling for about 15 years. I also am mama to a couple of little neurospicy pumpkins
The
who
best.
are 10 and 12. We're really on the out to be 11 and 13. It's birthday season. And
Fun.
so, a lot of where I see nervous system has been informed as I have shepherded the two that God gave me in my home.
Mm.
And it's influenced how I show up in the counseling room. But they've been equally as important in the way that I understand people.
Absolutely. And I love that you talk about that because I think, gosh, if I look back over even my nursing career of like what got me out of some of the work environments that I was in was paying attention to my own kids, right?
Yep.
And it kind of it forces you to look at the what you're learning, right, in your environment, your work environment, your education, and question some things, right? Because
Yes.
like all of it. I mean, for me, and I think especially we'll talk about this too, but especially when we have a faith background, right? It's like I've had to really ask myself some hard questions about scripture and how that was translating to my parenting. And like if I really believe that God made my kid the way that he made them,
Yeah.
yes, there's things to work on, right? And things to probably heal and all of that good stuff. But if he did all of those things, then scripture has to be looked at through that lens of love and protection in
Yep.
how I parent them, right? And not from fear or any of those other places. So we're going to talk about that today. But I think you bring, I don't think, I know you bring a wealth of experience in the mental health world, and looking at it from a holistic lens is vital. I don't know how anybody's surviving the mental health crisis without that. I
Yeah.
mean, truthfully, honestly. But I think that when it comes to nervous system stuff, I think a lot of times what we see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I want to hear your thoughts on this,
Yeah.
is we see people come in maybe with a diagnosis or they're looking for a diagnosis, and nobody's actually explained to them the nervous system role in this. They
Yeah.
maybe understood a little bit of how their trauma impacts their story, right?
Yep.
But when people hear mental illness or a diagnosis, they often think of something extreme, right? How do you explain this? And I know this could go a million different ways, so you can
Yeah.
just pick one or
That
two.
was great.
How do you explain this in terms of nervous system overload and
Mhm.
capacity instead of labels? Because labels can be informative, right? They can help us to know what patterns we're dealing with. But when we neglect to talk about the wiring, I think that's where we miss some things. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts on that.
I also think the diagnosis, while it can be validating for people, they're like, oh, I have a name for what I've been experiencing. A lot of times it can feel very hopeless,
Yeah.
right? I
Like
have
now
this
I'm stuck with this.
big, scary diagnosis, and I don't really know what that means, or do I have any way to move forward and heal?
Yeah.
And really, labels were meant to just be descriptive language.
Right.
It's just meant to tell you what's happening in shorthand, so I don't have to list out the list of symptoms every time.
Right.
But it doesn't tell you anything about how we got here and how we get out.
Right.
Um, And so I think, especially as I started to really understand the way God made our nervous systems, I heard Adam Young say this once on a podcast and it just stuck with me. He's like, I wish all Christians just understand you have neurons. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's so brilliant.
Basic, but yes, please.
Yeah. And we learn how to take care of our teeth and our hair and our skin and our diet. And we do not at all talk about you have a nervous system that needs to be taken care of.
Right,
And because it overlaps with concepts that are spiritual in nature, right? When we
right.
talk about anxiety, and God has some words to
Yeah,
say about anxiety, or we
yeah,
talk about sadness or depression, well, God has some words to say about those things.
right.
Child rearing, I think when they have overlap, we get very protective and we go, oh, I couldn't possibly learn anything out here in the neuroscience world that tells me
Right,
a little bit about the design. And yet we learn about the designer through design itself.
right.
So when people are coming in and going, oh, I have this label, I want to know how that's showing up for someone. And a lot of times symptoms are just your body talking to you, going, hey, I need help.
Right,
I need you to show up and take care of me because a lot of unreasonable things that we do or feel are for very, very good reasons. Um,
right.
and if we can start to understand what this symptom is doing for me, I can begin to have an idea of how to take care of what I need. And so instead of asking the question, what's wrong with me? I want to ask the question, what am I like and what do I need? As
That's
I
so
ask
good.
the question, what am I like and what do I need? Now I have a way to respond to this rather than just accept my diagnosis and carry on with life.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that because when we name an experience, right, that's happening, I feel anxiety in my body, right?
Mhm.
If even just a simple reframe of what is anxiety trying to tell me today? Maybe
Yep.
I didn't get enough sleep last night. Maybe I forgot to eat protein with my breakfast, you
Mhm.
know? Maybe it's been 6 hours since I've eaten. Maybe there is something really triggering that I need to, that is something that is not to be ignored, right? And looking at it as information, and even dysregulation is information, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, like you said, I think sometimes people take even the DSM, right, which is the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, as prescriptive instead of descriptive. It's
Yep.
only ever meant to be descriptive. And
Yeah.
so, like, yes, that can inform us, but it certainly is not the limit to where you're going to go, right? Which is, I mean,
Mm.
like, if you look back at my medical chart, it would say history of anxiety and depression. I'm like, well, who does hasn't? I mean, at
Yes.
this point. But also, I don't want that to be the defining aspect of who I am,
Yeah.
because it all makes perfect sense in the grand picture of my story, right? And so, what do because you do work with you work with families, right?
I
And
do.
adults and kids, and you have your own kids too. So, some of this
Mhm.
is informed by your own personal experience. What do you wish? I can't wait to hear your answer for this one. What do you wish parents really understood about the early signs of dysregulation before a diagnosis is given? Because so many parents, like myself, there were signs like
Oh, for sure.
before, like, and most of them, nobody could tell me what they meant. And
Yeah.
so I was trying to explain, I'm observing this thing and it seems kind of off, but like I don't know what it is. And so
Yeah.
how do you take how what do you think about that? What do you have to say
Yeah.
about that?
Well, I want to, this is going to sound so obvious, but I just feel like it's worth saying that parenting is a relationship.
Yes.
And so when we kind of are starting to think about, oh, how am I going to do this thing? And we read books and we get advice and we take seminars and we do all those things. I used to joke when my kids were little about a particular book that talked about schedules and training of sleep. And I was like, yeah, incidentally, my child has not read that book. Um,
Accurate.
Actually, and as I was
Surprise.
developing a relationship with my child and noticing what was happening, I found myself torn between responding to the need in front of me as I'm building this relationship with my
Mm,
child and the prescriptive things that I was told I'm supposed to do as a mom.
yes.
And so I want parents to understand that what is broken in relationship heals in relationship, but also what is happening in our body. God has designed relationship to be a part of the process.
Mm,
So when we're attuning, right, we're paying attention and we're going, that felt weird, or that feels off to me. I
yeah.
could tell mamas know.
Yep.
Mamas know. They
Right.
sometimes sense in their bodies what their brain can't make sense of.
Right.
And so I want to encourage people to like be curious about those things that you're noticing and don't
Absolutely.
be so quick to dismiss what your body is already telling you. Like, oh gosh, I'm noticing that they really have a hard time with transitions, like more than the
Mm,
average kid. Or gosh, I'm noticing when things get loud over a long period of time, that afterward, this is the kind of behavior I see. Or I'm
yes.
noticing, right? I think we are wired to pay attention.
Hmm.
And then what all these outside voices say, that's not what's happening. This is what's happening. And
Right.
so as we're interpreting, we're kind of allowing someone who's not in relationship with our child
Mm,
to start create all these like designs and methods and um,
right.
for what is supposed to be carried out in relationship.
I would
Um,
agree with that.
And
Yeah.
so, even like biblically speaking, right, we hear people say, like, train up a child in the way they should go. When he's old, he won't depart from that. And we think of the way as like this one particular way,
Right.
as opposed to the notion that our kids are arrows, right? Proverbs uses that imagery all the
Yep.
way through. And we're shooting them out of the quiver, launching them into the world for a lifetime of ministry and relationship and being outposts of truth, beauty, and goodness in the world. And each one of those kids comes with a particular bent.
Yep.
And a skilled archer will always look down that arrow and they'll know the natural bent of that arrow and they will
Mm,
adjust course as they are shooting out according to the bent of the arrow. They didn't have factories back then. And so part of our job as parents is to learn their bent and we course correct according to the bent that God made them in.
mm,
And so in that relational act, it doesn't matter how much information you're holding, what you can just cannot be rescued from is that my nervous
right.
system impacts yours and your nervous system impacts mine. And we are doing this thing in a relational space. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm like, if we can just get that as parents, I think we cover so much ground.
I love that analogy. I've never heard that analogy before, and I love it. And I think what it gives back to the parent is a little bit of power and a little bit of like a deep breath, right? Because I
Yes.
know for me, the places where I got really stuck and still can tend to get stuck in my parenting of neurospicy children,
Mhm.
depending on the day, is almost this like immediate shame response
Yeah.
to when there's a behavior I don't understand or that's really challenging. I have and I think that this is very common for parents. I
Mhm.
don't think this is unique to me, based off of what other people tell me. But it's this immediate response of, I should know how to fix this. So it's internal distress, right? I should
Yep.
know how to fix this. There must be something wrong with me that I don't.
Mhm.
Instead of the bigger truth, which is that dysregulation is a normal human experience.
Yep.
Everyone experiences it. We co-regulate with each other, like you
Yep.
said, which is where we're meant to be relational, and we don't ever grow out of that. Surprise. We don't ever grow out of that, right? The intensity of the need we do grow out of to a certain degree, but we all need to co-regulate with each other. And and so if I had known, oh my gosh, like I wish I could go back to my younger self and be like,
Oh,
dysregulation is so normal. Like
yep.
it is so normal and it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. On that note, if dysregulation is a normal human experience, what are some ways that parents can know where we've fallen outside of normal, appropriate,
Mhm.
correcting with co-regulation? And by correcting, I mean they're able to co-regulate and come into some sort of balance again, right?
Yep.
Versus when I should be concerned and start asking either how am I resourcing myself or how do I need to resource my child?
Yep.
What does some of that look like?
Oh, such a great question. I literally just did at a Disciple Now weekend at a local church a whole thing with the youth group on the window of tolerance, which was so
I
fun.
wish
Let
I
me
could have
teach
been
you
there.
about your window of tolerance and
Yes.
what happens when you bounce up into the attic or where you go down into the basement,
So
right?
good.
Such a normal thing for us to bounce up into that place of anxiety or
Mhm.
agitation or anger, or to drop
Yeah.
low into fatigue or numbness or shutting down. But generally speaking, when we're co-regulating and we're kind of walking through just normal things that would help people calm down or help people refill their cup, we should be able to come back into that window of tolerance with some help.
Yeah.
When we are stuck, right? When I feel like I'm living outside of that window of tolerance more
Yes.
than I'm living inside of it, or when I bounce out, it's taking very long periods of time to find my way back in.
Yeah.
Usually when I've been spun up and anxious, I should, as I'm taking time to calm myself down, or I'm sitting with someone I trust and they're giving me comfort, I should within a couple of minutes find myself back into a place of stability and maybe
Yeah.
need a little recovery time, but I should be able to generally make it that way. I knew with my daughter, we called them, her name's Elle, we called them episodes, that sometimes would take 45 minutes to an hour just to move through what felt like should be only taking a few minutes of,
Yeah.
intentional, um, focused attention toward her
Yeah.
with love and care and gentleness. And it was like, we can't get out. We're just stuck.
Hmm.
And so I think when we find ourselves either living outside of that window more than we aren't, or we find ourselves when we bounce up or we bounce down, it's really arduous to get back in.
Yes.
Um, I think that's when we need to widen our circle of care and we need to come look and go, what am I missing?
Yes.
What is my body, what is her little body telling me that I need to know that I may not be able to see? Is there some inflammation? Is there some kind of biological thing happening? Is there something in her nervous system that's being pulled at regularly?
Yes.
And we just want to start asking questions at that point to go, okay, this feels outside of the world of normal. And we do that with parents already, right?
Yeah.
You're checking in, like, does your child do this crazy thing?
Yeah. Is that just mine? Like, am I doing
Um,
something wrong? Yeah.
which can be so comforting, right?
Yes.
We're entering the tween and teen years, and I'm like, oh, you guys are weirdos, just like all those little weirdos.
Yeah.
Here for the
So
weirdos
true.
sake.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
But when we're doing things that have an abnormal flair, it's fair to ask that question and to go, okay, I'm sensing that this might be happening. Maybe I should invite someone in here.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good. And the thing that I would add to that is when one, just because you yourself as the parent don't have all of the answers or the resources doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Um,
Amen.
which I know you're already thinking.
Yeah,
But I think it's easy to feel that way because we feel like this kid was given to us. I should
I
have the
should be able to do this.
manual.
Yeah,
And that's very instinctual as moms because we are so protective. And I
yeah.
think we do take our role very seriously,
Hmm.
and sometimes probably a little too, I can be a little too serious sometimes. Doesn't always help me in some environments. However, on that note, I would also say when we're talking about if they're not able to bring themselves back into that window of tolerance, then, what kind of help do I need? Even just identifying or naming it. Is it only in certain situations? Is it
Situations. Yep.
only in music class? Is it only at church on Sunday? Is it
Yep.
only in the car? Okay, that gives me some information. Or is it more generalized to
Hmm.
now it's spilling over into all other environments, which just kind of lets us know the bigness of the problem, right? Or the what the nervous system needs are. Because the encouraging note I would share with parents here is that your nervous system is not your child's nervous system. Like I have one kid that is very much like she's very calm, very easygoing, go with the flow, a little bit ADD, a little bit neurospat. I've got my little fidget. magnets here to keep my
Love it.
hands busy. And one kid that is wired entirely differently, and some of that was because of a brain injury, inflammation that happened. But I think that can feel very overwhelming as a parent
Yeah.
because you're like, I'm required to meet this need that I don't even understand.
Yeah.
And so giving those basic tools like you just shared of what is a window of tolerance? Where are they falling outside of that? How long is it taking me to bring them back into it?
Mhm.
And just because you're not enough as the parent, not enough, I'm using quotation marks for those of you that are listening, doesn't mean you're failing your child. It just means that we need to outsource some of the
Yeah.
help, right? And like you said, increase that care circle.
Yeah. I I think there's so much that we read through this lens of behavior,
Hmm.
as right or wrong, where behavior is really communication.
Right,
Behavior just is like, I'm trying to tell you something that, right? Because they don't know.
right,
We can't understand it. Can you imagine them trying to explain to us what's happening in their little bodies?
right.
And so even to be able to come back and go, my child needs help,
Yeah,
um, and to go, and I need support.
yeah.
And that I need support is not sinful or wrong.
No,
That's called living in community.
yes.
We all need support, but we may need particular kinds of support based on what we're seeing.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that because I think that there is a paradigm shift that's happening, especially in church. I hope, where we're
Mhm.
starting to see a little bit of flourishing or a little bit of developmental growth in terms of our ability to understand that having needs that maybe are not neurotypical,
Yeah.
like we don't need to extrapolate any other meaning from it other than that you're a human with basic needs, right? So when you work with clients, whether that's children or adults that are deeply dysregulating, what would you say, if you could nutshell, the most common unmet needs that you see under some of these behavior drivers, like anxiety, rage, anger, um,
Mhm.
meltdowns? Like, what
Yeah.
would you say the unmet needs are if we could go with that lens?
Yeah. I think that's a great language for it. Sometimes it's just as simple as a sensory diet that's overwhelming to me.
Yes.
I'm either getting too much or not enough. Sometimes it's just being seen and understood, right?
Yeah.
The I'm communicating through this behavior something that I need, and it's being met with disconnection, um, further dysregulation because now my parent is dysregulated and they're upset with
Right.
me. And that can be a very disconnecting experience.
Right.
And so sometimes we have some attachment wounds being created in that
Yeah.
little pot of difficulty,
Yeah.
um, because our inclination when a child is not doing what we want them to do is it makes us upset, right?
Right.
And so I got to do what I got to do to get them to do what I want them to do. Um,
Right.
and so sometimes what comes out of me as a parent is also deeply dysregulating for them. Um, I think sometimes they're needing comfort, right? Maybe they're in pain,
Right.
or their body is hurting in some way, or there's some inflammation underneath. Um,
Right.
and so, but or I have a parent who, right? You kind of have to ask the question like, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so hard to know
Mm-hmm.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even maybe a parent walking through a season of difficulty and they're showing up in different
Mm,
ways can
yeah.
impact where their nervous system is being built. And so it may be, gosh, I had this child during this season, and in this season, I wasn't as attuned and showing up.
Yeah.
And that's not
Right.
our fault. It's
Right.
sometimes that's just where it happened. So I don't even think really any two kids have the same parents.
I would fully agree with that. 100%. And I
Um,
think it's good to acknowledge that because as you know, like even talking to I have two girls, right? And asking them how they perceive or experienced a certain situation, it will be vastly different, even though I was the exact same
Same
parent
person.
in the
Hmm.
middle of that, right? But and I have to have these conversations, especially with my youngest, who her older sister, has pandas, so she's very well recovered at this point, but still has a loss of executive function. So
Yeah.
there are things she does not have an innate skill to do that we're building in her as her brain recovers, meaning things that come very easily to her 10-year-old sister don't come easily to her.
Mhm.
And so that has required, a very different approach to chores, discipline, everything.
Yep.
And sometimes that feels really unfair to my youngest, and she voices that. And I'm
Mm.
like, you know
Yes.
what? I can totally see why you would feel that way. But
Yeah.
let's talk about, your sister has this capacity and you have this capacity. I'm requiring her to do different, like she has to go to therapy. She still does some physical therapy, occupational therapy. That's work for her. Those are
Yep.
her chores.
Hmm.
And and at the same time, I definitely, it's that validation piece of I understand how this feels to you.
Yep.
And at the same time, are your brains the same? Does your brain work that? And she's like, no. Okay, well then what would make you feel like fairly compensated or whatever? Because we have to look at it like we've just had to parent very differently in that
Yeah.
context. And I think even for me as a parent, just acknowledging that their experiences of me, even though I am the same parent, I have had to parent them differently because their sensory needs are different, their emotional needs are vastly different.
Yeah.
How I've had to show up for my child who's very literal, very black and white, very, I need to know the answers to this before I will comply, is very different than my other child, right? And um, so with that, you kind of already touched on this. How does a parent's nervous system interact with a child who is already dysregulated?
Oh,
It's a loaded
um,
question, right?
yes. Well, I mean, we're learning so much in the world of what they call interpersonal neurobiology, right? It's the space where our nervous systems connect. And so it can turn into emotional pinball real fast. When we
Yes.
have a child who's dysregulated, maybe there's some unmet need we can't see, or they're just wired a little bit different. And then, as you talked about, right, there's this shame response in a parent, which, right, shame is an embodied reality. When
Mm-hmm.
we feel shame,
Yeah.
all kinds of things happen, right? We
Yeah.
kind of disconnect, we back up, we may try to control. So when I'm dysregulated, what that does is it perpetuates or even exaggerates the dysregulation happening in my child.
Yeah.
Um, Now, the wonderful thing is on the other side, what can be really stabilizing and really helpful for a kid who's dysregulated is a nice, calm nervous system.
Yeah.
In my practice, and I really work primarily with parents now and adults now. My early practice, I saw a lot more kids and teenagers, but I do find myself working in family space quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I tell people in my practice, one of the best things I can give my clients is a calm, regulated nervous system that is ready to hold whatever walks into the room.
Yes.
And that's part of the gift because it's an anchoring experience when they come and they talk about something that's very difficult, or they're even maybe I'm navigating a conversation between family members that's very difficult. My
Right.
presence in the room because it becomes an anchor because my nervous system impacts theirs.
Right.
So even simple things like I tell people to think of the word down, calm
Mm-hmm.
down, sit down, slow down,
Right.
lower your voice, take your cadence of how you're speaking, right? When someone's up here,
Yeah. Slow it down.
your ability to do all of that actually can be very regulating for them.
Right.
And that's absolutely true in the home. So when my kids are spinning and pinging off of each other and there's conflict, one of the best things I can do is take a deep breath, kind of shake it out a little bit, even
Mm-hmm.
take a minute for myself
Right.
to regulate and to come back um, because my nervous system actually has the power to create anchor for them.
Absolutely.
And it to me it's so reflective of the way God meets us when we're outside of our
Mm-hmm.
window,
Right.
right? He's near to the brokenhearted and he saves the
Yeah.
crushed in spirit. He invites us to cast our anxieties upon him. He
Mm.
enters in. I mean, I just think even as we were talking about physical needs, I think about an Elijah who's right
Yeah.
complaining about his
Yeah.
job because it's hard.
Yeah.
And God's like, here, boo, have some food and take a
Take a
nap.
nap. 40 days later, you know.
And, and
Um,
there is a sense that he meets us in
yeah.
that place. And so when we parent, we're so reflective of that when we can meet them in that place with resource.
Absolutely. And I think this brings up two things. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. I think this brings up the importance of working through your own story, your own
Yes.
nervous system story as a parent, because so many of us, I can't speak for everyone, but I'd bet a fair amount of money I'm not wrong on this. So I'm curious what you think. I think a fair amount of us don't actually know our developmental nervous system story until we have children. And then
Yep.
it's like boom, 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 all the buttons are being pushed, right? I don't know why I panic on the inside when my child's screaming, you know? I don't know why I break out into a sweat when they don't listen to me. Like that is a
Mhm.
nervous system story. And a lot of the parents I work with, I work as a neurofeedback practitioner 2 days a week, and then I do a lot of, functional medicine stuff the other couple days of the week and all kinds of other side projects within that. Um, one of the reasons why it's so impactful to work with the parent is because of exactly what you said.
Yep.
But deeper than that, it's when we allow our own story to be met with integration and
Yep.
care and compassion and the parts of you that want to just rage right back because your child's raging at you and you don't know where that little part of you is stuck,
Mhm.
having somebody to help you navigate the dynamics of your story so that you can show up in a way
Yep.
that's regulating. And the second thing is to just own the fact that we're human and model for them like, you know
Yes.
what? I had a rough morning and I am not in the place to deal with this at the moment. I can't even tell you how many times I have said that. And most of the time they're fine with it now that they're a little bit older, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I need a hot minute. I need to actually calm myself down. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to throw some rocks in the backyard. I mean, like whatever it is,
Yeah.
to show up for them because there is the reality that as humans, we don't have an endless capacity. We
Yep.
don't have an endlessly resourced nervous system. And our kids need to know that they still get to be safe while I work on me.
Yep.
And and I think for me, once I understood that I wasn't abandoning them, I wasn't creating neglect trauma by doing that, by communicating that with them, I was actually modeling something that was really
Yep.
healthy. I think the work that you're doing with parents is so impactful because we don't, and I also think it's the hardest thing for us to acknowledge. Like we bring our kids to therapy for you to fix them, right?
Yes.
And
I can't do this. You do this.
we don't want to hear about our own story or our own trauma or how that's impact. So I do think that we do have to develop a certain willingness to say, my nervous system is telling me a story right now in
Hmm.
this interaction. And sometimes even painting it that way of my nervous system,
Hmm.
not me as a person, but my body, my soul, my mind is having a story about this situation that I need to work out. Um,
Oh,
and once I kind of got that, I feel like life, I just could chill out a little bit. Like
yep.
it was like, okay, I'm doing the important work here, and I can't fix this. I can't fix this diagnosis. I can't fix any of this that's going on outside of me until I look at what's happening
In, inward. Yeah.
inside. And that's the hardest, honestly, that's the hard work.
Yeah. I have learned to say so much more quickly when people are coming and going, help my child, to go,
Tell me about you.
let's talk about you. Who's taking
Yeah,
care of you?
yeah,
Um, who's giving you support as you're navigating these
yeah,
parenting waters? Because there is so much reparenting that we do as we come alongside of our kids.
absolutely.
Um, and how many times in in a parenting interaction with your child that you go, oh, 47-year-old Amy is no longer in the room, and you
Yeah.
just toe to toe with 16-year-old Amy. And
Yep.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I actually had to explain this to my oldest. Now that she's older, she reminds me so much of my sister, and my sister was not nice to me as a kid. And so I was like, "Oh, I am not parenting from a wise mind
Mhm.
space. Like I am parenting from a triggered little 5-year-old being pushed around by her big sister space." And
Yeah.
so this is why, like this is why working through that developmental stuff matters. It is the hardest work, I think, that we can do as
Mhm.
parents, but I also think it's the most meaningful,
Yeah.
um, because we leave our kids with so much less of a burden. They already have a burden of their own nervous system,
Yeah.
right? That maybe doesn't work the way the way that fits perfectly into our neurotypical world, right? Like they already have struggles there. Why would we add more to that piece? I recently had a conversation with a mom who, was bringing several of her kids in for neurofeedback, and I won't get into the details of their story, but she was coming in very anxious and, emoting a lot of things. And I remember my initial response was irritation
Mhm.
because it was like kind of being bombarded a little bit. And all of a sudden I sat down and I was silently praying to myself and I was like, Lord, would you help me to see what's going on? Because I'm having a hard time reading this information. Like I'm struggling to read the room, like on where this is coming from. And all of a sudden I just was like melted with his compassion for her and how tired she must be and how anxious she was. And I just gently said, I said, I'm just curious, as somebody who's worked through burnout and has kids that have had a lot of needs, how are you doing? And immediate tears, like just no one's taking care of you. And I said, okay, so
Yeah.
we're going to come up with a plan for that because I watch your kids for 45 minutes during their session, which means you can go for a walk. You can go
Mm.
next door and grab a slice of pizza. You can go get a coffee. That is part of your treatment plan.
So good.
And I'm like, because this is really hard. And I think that was the first time anybody had acknowledged to her that having kids with ADHD or anxiety is very dysregulating
Yeah.
on the adult nervous system, regardless of your history, right? Um, and yet we can misread behavior. Like that's my humanity coming in. Like I misread the behaviors, right? And I was like, I'm irritated because this is disrupting my flow and
Mm.
what have you. So I love that you pointed out that you do that as well when parents come in, and I'm sure you're met with some resistance sometimes because we are so good at
Mhm.
pretending we're fine, right? When everyone is stuck in survival mode, this is the piece that I want to land on for today
Okay.
because I think this
Great.
is the part that we were stuck in for a while when all four of us were stuck in some sort of triggered trauma response, and it felt like the boat was sinking and we're trying to like bail the water out, but it's like just not fast enough, right? How do you determine if you had like a hierarchy of who to help first in those situations?
Mhm.
How do you help families determine that? Because I know that a lot of our listeners are in that place.
Yeah.
And it feels pointless to try. I think that it's like, why try when I'm like what I'm doing doesn't make an effort or doesn't make an impact. How would you, obviously without knowing their personal details, but how would you help somebody to identify where to start?
Yeah. So I would start in two places. I think it's wise always for mom and dad to go first,
Yep,
right? Lead the
agreed.
way by making sure that you are resourced and you're taken care of and that you have what you need. A
Yeah,
system that's in stress like that needs rest, it
yeah.
needs safety, and it needs support. And so
Hmm.
we carve out all the extras, right? Like maybe
Yeah,
this is a time that we're going to do less activities here and we're
yep.
going to do, and then I would walk with them to say, let's start with life over limb, right? Let's
Hmm.
let go of all the little, this is just my
That's
preference.
really good.
This is, when we do CPR, when we do first aid training, right? You're
Yeah,
always taught to do life over limb, right? There's no
exactly.
point in putting a tourniquet when somebody's heart has stopped.
Right. Good point.
Start
Yes.
there. And so we go, what feels like it is maybe the most life draining or most demanding part of this system. But I just don't think we can even do that at the kid level until mom and dad have some feet to stand on.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is that what we need more than anything else is understanding. Like,
Hmm.
right, we may be investigating, we may be doing tests, we may be, and so we want to understand what's happening. And
Yeah.
so if I don't have a really great way to interpret what's happening in my home, I don't know what kind of care to give it.
Right.
Um, and so, and again, I think that has to be tailored to each person, but I
Right.
want parents to think in terms of what creates less demand, what creates safety, and let's boil it down to the most important things and let's let the peripherals go. You do
Absolutely.
not need to have a fight about whether or not you're brushing your teeth on a daily basis.
Right.
When you go, I can't even make it through one transition in the day without an hour-long meltdown.
Yeah.
Teeth, not a thing right now. That's just
Nope.
not a thing.
Yeah.
And so helping them prioritize all the plate because it's in those moments we want to control what we can. Um,
Yes.
and then we're just adding fuel to the fire.
Right.
So even helping them like let's look at all the things and then let's identify which of these are life and which of these are limb.
That's
Um,
so good.
and let's let limb go for a minute.
Absolutely. I've got stories.
Oh,
The next time I have you on, we will get into the nitty-gritty of our neurospicy families because I think it helps people. I
Mhm.
think it really does. Like the
Yep.
clinical stuff, obviously, all of this is so good. And I love what you shared about life over limb, prioritizing the parents. The other thing I would say to that too, for us, we did like it wasn't ideal. I wanted to get my child into therapy every week, but I also needed therapy. And so I went twice a month. She went twice a month.
Yep.
Husband,
Oh,
we rotated. So it was
yep.
just like once a month is better than nothing. I mean, honestly.
Yes.
And it's no, none of this is perfect. None of this is ideal. But I think even some of the things that you brought up allow people to ask their therapist those questions, right? Of where
Mhm.
do we start? I'm overwhelmed. I want to do all of these things. I'm anxious. I'm spinning out. Help me to
Mhm.
prioritize where the needs actually are because what I might be thinking is the big priority is not maybe the big
Yeah.
priority right now. And sometimes we just have a really hard time seeing that
Yep.
in the middle sometimes, all the time. We have a hard
All the
time
time.
seeing that.
I need people's outside eyes.
Yeah,
It does not
absolutely.
matter how much knowledge and experience I bring to the table. When I'm a parent, I'm a parent.
Yeah,
And
we're
so
in it.
sitting on the other side of the room and letting a practitioner sit with me, and
Yeah.
as I process those things through, so wise and so helpful, because I can't. I mean, if you drew on your hand and I said, I want you to look at it, and you held it
Yeah.
right up next to your eyeballs, you wouldn't be able to see or describe
Right.
anything. Holding it out here gives you the space you need to perceive.
Yes.
That's what letting someone look in does. It gives you the
That's so
ability
good.
to see what's right up next to your nose. You cannot see
Mm,
what's right up next to your nose,
no.
but someone else can.
Yeah.
And so I need that. I don't
Same.
want to be so prideful to say, oh, as a provider,
No.
I never need to sit with a provider.
No, and in fact, I think the opposite is almost true because we have a clinical lens that is helpful most of the time and not sometimes.
Yes.
And that gives
If your
us this,
child has ever looked at you and said, don't counsel me,
yeah,
that may have
stop being
happened
my
once or
nurse mom. If
stop.
yep, yeah, you tell
Yes.
me to take another supplement. Okay, I've put the goal above the relationship. They're good at checking us with that, which I appreciate.
Me too.
But
I hope we get in that nitty gritty. I think it'd be fun.
we will. I'm gonna say we're gonna get it on the schedule for us to have another conversation. This was so fun, Amy. I know that every listener got some nuggets out of this. I will make sure to put in the show notes where to contact you for those that are local to you. Do
Yep.
you do any work virtually?
We do some work virtually.
Okay.
Our counselors can only see people in the state of Texas.
Okay.
But our wellness coach, our functional medicine coach, our soul care director, they can all see people outside of the state. The other thing we
Amazing.
offer is intensives where people, if they want to come and they
Yeah.
stay for a couple days, we don't
That's
just counsel
awesome.
here. We have massage therapy
I've
and yoga
seen the
and
little
walking trips, and
cabins.
it's the best.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and it not uncommon for someone to bring their teenage client in, and I'm
Mm.
like, while they're in session, get thee to new calm and go take a nap.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, I will make sure to put all of that information in the show notes. And I think the next time I have you on, we'll talk more about the momming side of this, what home life looks like, how we strategize around different struggles, I'm sure, I might just put this out to the listeners what they want to hear from us too. But
Yep.
it was so fun to have you on. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
expertise. Thank you for how well you care for other people. It's a privilege to meet somebody that, we're on the same wavelength
Uh,
here. What a gift you are. So thank you for your time today.
yes, thank you. And thank you for putting out such a lovely podcast. What a
Oh,
great resource for parents.
oh, thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you next